What a player, James Maddison. And let's put this in context, this career so far, because since James made his Premier League debut in August 2018, he scored more goals from outside the box than any other player. Only one has scored more free kicks, James Ward-Prowse. 7th for assists, 5th for chances created, and 4th for chances created from set pieces. So when we see those numbers, we're talking about an elite Premier League footballer. Is that how you see yourself, James?
No, I'll be humble enough to say no. It's obviously always awkward when someone peeps so much praise on you to my face. Thank you, kind words. Nice stats, yeah.
But let me phrase it slightly differently then, because I think it was a bit clumsy, actually, to be honest. How proud are you when you see those numbers and you see the fact that you are so high in all those categories?
No, very proud, yeah. That's years of hard work, and I've always tried to be at a high level when I play. Managed to obviously get to the Premier League, which I was so happy about 8 years ago now. Feels like yesterday. Also feels like a lifetime ago. But no, very proud of the numbers that I've put up over the 8 years through Leicester and a couple of years at Tottenham. And yeah, here we are. Plenty more to go though. Still got many years left.
Still only 29. This is a brief respite, sorting yourself out with this injury. And hopefully you'll be back stronger than ever. I have to say, I think this artwork is absolutely fabulous, charting your career from Coventry, Norwich, Leicester, Spurs, and of course, must be really proud to see yourself in the England shirt as well. But let's take you all the way back to the start at Coventry. Now, this was your club, signed at 6. Was that when you were spotted?
My first trial at 6, yeah, just before my 7th birthday, yeah, and was there from that stage, through every stage you can kind of go through up until the first team. First went into the first team when I was 16, I think, in a matchday squad with Stephen Presley, who was my first manager, put me in. I look back at pictures and I just think, wow, I look about 11, I think.
Did you feel ready though when you were 16?
I always felt ready. I always had a self-belief, and I always feel like one of my biggest assets, even now, and it always has been, is kind of the belief I have in myself. That even when people are questioning you, because they always question you whether you're that big, whether you're even established, like people always doubt and question. And I've always just had a mentality of just having a really strong self-belief, that having almost like a high opinion of yourself without it bordering over the line of being like big-headed and arrogant. I think that's quite a good mentality to have throughout your career, always wanting to prove people wrong that doubt kind of thing. And I had that from a young age, and I still have that now, yeah.
And from an early age, you were someone who looked like you thrived in big moments, big pressure situations.
Do you know what? We could have went down that day, and that was a late goal to like almost seal the fact that we weren't going down. I think we were winning the game, maybe. I can't actually remember. Might have been drawing, but that like solidified the position in League One. And as a 17, 18-year-old lad who was born and bred in Coventry, grew up a few minutes from the old Highfield Road. That was a very satisfying feeling. Absolutely. For me, my family, my friends.
But as a slight young man growing up, we were talking about this earlier. Did you find that you had to sort of have coping mechanisms when you started playing in men's football against some big guys, particularly when you're dipping into League One as your starting point? Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I was a late developer physically. Even for people my age, so even when I was 15, 16, and I started training with the first team for the first time, I was still one of the small ones in my own age group, let alone going to play with the men. And you just got to find a different way. Me and Carragher spoke about it earlier. It was just different ways, because you said similar, didn't you? When you were a centre half, you weren't the biggest as well. You just find a way. So I found a way of having to be extra clean technically, touch, use my body and balance well to win free kicks, because I couldn't battle physically at that age. As I said, I developed probably 18, 19, 20, really late. So there'll probably be dads and kids watching now that are going through the same sort of thing of, is he going to be big enough? Is he going to be strong enough? We all develop, some at different rates. It depends whether... I'm always thankful to Coventry for sticking with me, giving me a scholarship, putting me in the first team based on the fact that I wasn't physically there yet, because it was so good for my development. And I think that's why I would say I'm a technically good player, which is why I think it goes all the way back to the start with that, of having to be then to be able to cope, yeah.
I think that it's really interesting. When we talk about players getting spotted, and we talk about scouts and people who spotted this player. Now, it's easy to spot the best player in a game of football. You don't need to be a great football brain. I think the best skill as a scout is spotting people, maybe like your other players, who you're almost seeing what he could be in the future. Maybe you're not the best player at a younger age. You talk about technically being good, but the strongest ones are dominate, maybe scoring the most goals. But you see something in a player, and you think he's got something. He's maybe not standing out here because of his physical attributes, but in the future, when he catches up with anyone, he's going to be a special talent. I think in terms of scouting and looking at players, that's the great art.
So then you got your move to Norwich, but you didn't go straight there. You went back to Coventry, and then there was a loan spell at Aberdeen as well. Was that important in terms of your development?
The loan at Aberdeen, or just the move to Norwich?
The loan at Aberdeen.
Yeah, the loan at Aberdeen was very beneficial. That was my first kind of where I felt like, because you know when you're an academy player, you don't always necessarily feel, even though you're in the first team and I was starting. Tony Mowbray gave me the number 10. I felt like you don't always feel necessarily like a first-team player. You almost feel like an academy graduate in a way, no matter how old you get. I've seen it in other cases as well at other clubs. But that was my first time I'd gone into a dressing room as a sign-in, and I felt like I'd obviously done it at Norwich, but I went straight out on loan to Aberdeen in my first pre-season because we had Houlihan, Pritchard, Naismith, established names at the level that were very good. But yeah, Aberdeen, I went in there with Derek McInnes, and that was the first time I walked in and I was a sign-in, and people were judging me off me, and I just felt like I had to prove myself. And yeah, like I only had the first half of the season there, but great memories. It was a great changing room, and definitely learnt a lot, and it gained valuable experience to then go back to Norwich and kick on. Yeah.
And we saw that free kick that was actually against Rangers, and this was something that you have become known for. Was it something that you were always good at, that you particularly trained hard for, or just had a natural talent at it?
Oh, I just used to love Becks. I used to honestly love David Beckham. Yeah, I've called him Becks like I know him.
Like Brian?
Sir David.
I'm on nickname terms tonight. No, I used to love David Beckham growing up. So I actually used to like mimic him in the garden and just really try and even like copy his technique to the absolute T. And then as I got older, I kind of made it my own as a way. I still had a certain few aspects that I thought was when I used to copy Beckham. But yeah, kind of just, I wouldn't say mastered it, because you never quite fully master it, but became almost like grew a technique which was repeatable and would get good results. I've scored a lot of free kicks in my career.
Who else do you when you, because I always think a little bit like, say, goal scorers. You know, the top goal scorers are always fighting for the golden boot. Do you look at other free kick takers and think, who's better than me? Who do you see maybe is better than you on the same level?
There's a few
Look at that list. Look at that.
clues there, maybe, James.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that stat. I'm very proud of that one. I put a lot of practice in on the training ground and stuff. Well, to answer your question, in this kind of like, in my kind of era of Premier League, I said earlier, every head must bow. James Ward-Prowse I think he's just he's in kind of a level of his own. The repeatability, the repetition, the numbers, and even when he actually hasn't scored one for a while, he hasn't played as much. But he's brilliant.
You're counting.
Oh no, I just know he's very close to that record. I know he's very close to that record.
Yeah.
Are you confident you're going to get in third position?
4 more.
Yeah. Joint third would be 3 more. I would like to back myself and think I've got the ability, and I still want to play for many more years. I've still got so much left in me. I'm so hungry to get back and chase stuff like that. And as long as I can nudge Pedro Porro off free kicks more often, I'm sure I'll be able to get there.
So you were. Let's take you back to this journey. So you've had your spell in League One. You've had a taste of it in Scotland. Then you're back at Norwich, fighting for a shirt there. How did you find that period?
Yeah, it was actually quite difficult because it was. I came back from Aberdeen, and I had half a season of being in the squad, being left out the squad, on the bench, unused sub, that kind of where you're on the fringe of the squad. I made a couple of appearances off the bench at the end of the season, and then I had 1 full season, which you're obviously seeing the clips from here, under Daniel Farke, and then got my move. But the year in the Championship, honestly, the Championship's such a competitive, brilliant league that I adapted pretty quickly to it, and I think that's why English football and you see people struggle to adapt to the Premier League. All this was just valuable experience of the intensity and the physical aspect of English football, which left me in good stead when I joined the Premier League, because the Championship's grueling, it's long, and I only had the one season, but I think I played 45 out of 46 games and scored a lot of goals and learnt so much.
You got your big move to Leicester, so how exciting was it to take that next step in the Premier League?
I commentated on your first game. Was it Old Trafford?
The first game?
Yeah,
Friday night,
yeah.
Yeah, I remember. So first time I'd really seen you
So
play.
let me ask you, Jamie, did you think that when you saw him that this was someone who could make it in the Premier League?
Yeah, because the thing I love in football is personality. And I'm not talking off the pitch and giving interviews, I'm talking about personality on the pitch. And I think you've got both. And what I mean by that is always wanting the ball. One of the biggest things in football for me, and I was always taught that by my dad, was no matter how the game's going, you always want the ball, you always want to show, you want to help your teammate. I remember watching you in the number 10 position off the front.
Yeah, behind Vardy, yeah.
Yeah, so I was just watching, and you were permanently, Old Trafford's a big pitch, there's space there to get between the lines, and you were constantly showing and getting on the half turn. And it was more, I can't remember if you created a chance or nearly scored, but something just told me straight away, he's got something about him, this lad, because you just always wanted the ball. First game in the Premier League away at Old Trafford.
I remember that night, I remember it vividly. I went home and actually had recorded the game and watched it back and watched the coverage, and hearing you and Gary Neville give me praise, and I was just like, yeah, this is the Premier League. I was so happy to be there. I remember first couple of minutes the ball got played into Paul Pogba, and he just shielded it with his backside and just couldn't get near, and I thought, wow, like this is... But I grew into the game and ended up having a pretty good game, and yeah, I always try and play with that personality. That will never lose me. I hate sometimes that people may think that the personality off the pitch, and I don't know, I think I've got quite a jokingly personality, like I like to have a laugh and do some of the social media banter and the YouTube stuff and all that. I'd never want people to come away from the fact that I love that I'm a footballer, and I'm so hungry and passionate about being a footballer and being better, and I can't wait to be back, and I'm just so hungry to be back and showing my personality on the pitch, because that's where I do my best work, and that's what I love doing the most. I had some great times at Leicester, brilliant club. I absolutely loved my time here.
And some real success as well, didn't you? I mean, those back-to-back top 5 finishes.
Wow.
Yeah. We had I feel like the time at Leicester, it was a little bit. It just ended on a little bit of a sour note, just because of the relegation and how it finished, which I was utterly disappointed about. But so many good times, like all these memories just flooding back. Like, scored a lot of goals and just helped the team, and we had a successful period with an FA Cup, Community Shield, and like you said, back-to-back 5th places under Brendan for the majority, which was I look back on as just a big part of my life, that period. Became a father there, met my partner there.
First.
Apart from the... not in chronological order. But yeah, just great times at Leicester, and like I said, just devastated that it finished in relegation, but a brilliant time nonetheless for the other years.
Yeah, we've got a graphic actually. Let's have a look at this, James, and I'll come and sort of talk you through this, because I know you're someone that's always sort of looked closely at your numbers, and that's pretty clear, and I think that shows your sort of seriousness about the game in terms of your Premier League career. And this spell at Leicester, so the Greens are obviously the best numbers.
Yeah.
So top goals, 21-22, when you scored 12 and 8 assists as well, to finish with 20 goals and assists. Was that when you felt, you were really getting somewhere as a footballer? People were taking notice of you?
Yeah, I would say this is just Premier League numbers as well. You have a weird thing about yourself. You know the numbers, man. I know all the stats kind of thing of my career. They just stick with me quite well. That season was the season we got to a European semi-final. It was the Conference League, because we had dropped out the Europa League, and I got 18 goals that year. That was a big season. We lost to Roma in the semi-final, Jose's Roma, and they went on to win the competition. I actually remember I went through a little spell where I probably just couldn't find the back of the net. I was still getting chances, and I just weren't scoring enough. And he actually said something on commentary or in the punditry years ago now. It might have been around just before lockdown, and he questioned about me and my inclusion in the England squad and what I've got to do to get in at that point. And Carragher said, I love the way he plays and stuff, it just doesn't score enough goals. And I remember thinking, yes, I do, and I'm going to show you. And I went back to the drawing board, how can I score more? Why am I not putting some chances away? And I went on a really hot streak of them sort of numbers and managed to get back in the squad.
You'll thank me one day.
Yeah, I'm sure I will.
I think he just did, actually.
Yeah, backhanded compliment.
Yeah. So you mentioned the way that it ended at Leicester. I think it surprised all of us, James, because this was a squad that had been challenging for Champions League football and competing in European competitions, and then suddenly finds itself with largely the same group of players dropping out of the league. When you reflect on that, how do you think that really happened?
So it's a weird one, because I actually feel like we probably overachieved for a couple of seasons, but then almost Leicester fans expect that, and then we underachieved massively with the relegation. It's probably, if there was a level playing field, it'd be somewhere in the middle. But because you have the highs of fifth at FA Cup and Community Shield, you know what fans are like, and that's the beauty of football. They get carried away and they think we should be here, and the relegation was obviously, we were there, but we probably should have been there. And yeah, that will still haunt me. I think about that sometimes, you know, stuff like that doesn't leave you. When you have that competitive willingness to win, that season will never leave me. I do try and balance it with the fact that in this period under Brendan, we had some great times and we gave Leicester fans stuff that they'll remember forever, like the days at Wembley and the fifth place and some of the games at home that we beat the big teams and stuff. But that one will always sit there, and it's just part of the journey. There's ups and downs. It's like a roller coaster, but that was one of the negatives that just lingers, you know.
And there'll be some great moments to reflect on as well, of course. And then there was the big money move to Spurs. Was it always Spurs for you?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, there was talk. There was a few conversations with other clubs and stuff, but I always just felt like, I'm not just saying this as a cliche, I always felt like I was going to be a Tottenham player, there's genuine meaning behind that. I'm not just saying that because I'm at Tottenham now and I'm trying to get the fans to love me or whatever. I used to play against Spurs and I just felt like when Ericsson left, there was kind of a little gap for a player like myself, and especially when Harry was there, Sonny, I saw myself, I envisioned that kind of thing. So when I got the call, it was one that I didn't want to turn down. I couldn't really entertain anything else really, because I could picture myself in the white shirt at the stadium.
And what a start you had under Ange Postecoglou, if you recall, that 10 games into the season, unbeaten. I think it was 8 wins and 2 draws, and Ange Postecoglou had the team flying. I think it was actually this point when Jamie said, I think I said on this programme, Jamie, I remember it, that you said that James Maddison was the most influential player in the Premier League. And that was just like 10 games into the season.
It was, because the way Ange played, it was a joy to watch. I mean, we also described Tottenham always as the most entertaining team to watch. And when you want to entertain people, need you up more than someone like James Maddison, the system of sort of the fullback. Sometimes you'd be popping up into fullback position. Explain a little bit about how that system works, because it was something that we probably hadn't seen in the Premier League before in terms of midfield players going into sort of fullbacks going into midfield position. We see it a little bit more now. I mentioned this on commentary on Sunday. We're now actually seeing fullbacks actually going into number 10 positions now. But I think Ange was probably the first person to do it. How did that rotation work? How much work was there on the training ground?
Yeah, there was a lot of work on the training ground. We'd never have a session with Ange where the base of the session and the model wasn't around how we played, with fullbacks inside and wingers high and wide, not really allowed to move from the touchline, kind of fixed wingers, and then rotation from the midfield three. I think we had seen it a few times with Pep and putting Zinchenko in midfield. So one, Ange then did it with the 2 and would end up in number 10 positions, and he absolutely loved that. He'd love when his fullbacks, because we'd work on it, you know. So sometimes he'd show us clips. I hope he doesn't mind me saying if he's watching that. He'd show us clips of the fullbacks in the number 10 positions, and then maybe your number 10 and your number 8 in the fullback positions. Just like rotation, there's still a structure, but it just didn't matter who the personnel was. And he enjoyed that, and we loved playing. It was, you would describe it as chaotic and entertaining and stuff, but it was really fun to play with. And we ended up with a trophy under Ange, so huge respect. I loved that little period with him. We had ups and downs, but that's what I miss. I miss the ups and downs, being injured. Like, that's what keeps you alive, you know. I miss everything about the game at the minute, but that period under Ange was one I'll look back on fondly, I think.
We'll throw that graphic up again with your numbers on, just to show you that the green box in the corner tells us that was actually your most productive season last season in terms of minutes per goals and assists. Were you aware of that?
I didn't know it was my most productive. No, I knew I'd scored a lot of goals and assists with the minutes I was getting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one thing that obviously last season I was getting took off a lot in the 70th minute,
frustrating?
65th minute. Yeah, that would leave me annoyed at Ange. Like, I love him, but also at times you don't want to, especially as an attacking player, when I'm scoring a lot, you don't want to be brought off.
Would you chat
Ever.
about that?
Yeah, we'd
With the
debrief
manager?
a lot. I was part of the leadership. He made me the vice captain. We'd talk. I'd go in his office. I remember a couple of chats we had that were. He was an honest man, and you're really honest, straight to the point. You could have a really good conversation with him if he felt something, he'd just tell you, and vice versa. But no, it was disappointing the way where we finished in the league, because I actually felt like individually I had a lot of good performances within it, but we just couldn't string it together as a team. So ultimately, it doesn't really matter about all this stuff, because if you're scoring and not putting together consistent performances as a team, it doesn't really matter,
Yeah, that team had a bit of everything, didn't it? And as you say, you went on to win the Europa League, but I think everyone was just sort of surprised that there was Roy. There's the Roy celebration.
I remember that week. That was No, I love Roy Keane. People ask me about Roy Keane loads since that, and
I think he loves you.
If I'm watching the TV, I want to watch Roy Keane because he's box office, and he's entertaining. He's and he was a top player, and he's great to watch, isn't he? But he obviously gave me a bit of criticism in the week, and I ended up scoring against United. So if you're not allowed to hit back at him, then
I think it's Jamie says
what's the point,
He quite like
you know
that.
what? Actually, people think you're as me with someone else. They love all. I love that thing of coming back and someone coming back and having a bit of personality, a bit of character. And you know what? If I was a player, there wasn't as many sort of TV shows or pundits about when I was a player. I think I'd be exactly the same. Why would you just take that? Take criticism or you give a little bit back, in a respectful manner. It was brilliant. Yeah, great TV.
So let's talk about your international career.
Yeah,
7 England caps. How does that sit with you?
Very proud. Also feel like it should and could be more at this stage, but I also don't feel like that chapter's over. Far from that. I'm very hungry to be back fit, to be able to be in them conversations again. Again, without trying to, I don't want to sound big-headed or arrogant, but I know if I'm playing well and I'm at the level, I can play at a really high level in the Premier League, the top league. So I'm hungry to get back. I'm very motivated. Sometimes when you have a big injury like this, you have time to reflect and think more than just going into another season and pre-season and then first game, and then you actually have more time to kind of come away from it a little bit, and that's one of the positives, one of the small positives of being injured. And I just don't think that chapter's closed at all.
No, I'm sure it's not. How do you reflect on the World Cup then, 2022, when you had that great form that carried you into the squad?
Yeah.
But then didn't get any game time when you were there.
I got injured. In the game. Pretty unlucky. I got a little knock to my knee. It weren't a big injury. It was just a small one, but kept me out for a few weeks in the West Ham game. The game before we actually met up, scored in the game and had to go off in the first half, and was hoping that it was nothing. But I had to have the first couple of weeks of training without the squad, and then by then we'd played the first couple of games, and I then tried with Kempy, the physio, who they were all brilliant, but just couldn't get fit. I managed to get on the bench for the round of 16, but I hadn't trained, and I kind of knew my kind of tournament was almost over when I was sat there, because I'd literally hardly trained. So that
must have been devastating.
Oh, of course, yeah. I'd worked so hard to get there, but again, that's just part of the ups and downs of football, and just it's one of them. It's disappointing, but use that as motivation to try and get back in, and get back to another one.
I suppose that's my next question. Does that all make you hungrier, that disappointment of 2022, the being part of that Spurs group that got to the Europa League final but not actually being fit to be on there and lifting the trophy? Does that all sort of add the hunger and the fuel to the fire for next time?
Yeah, everything does. The Europa League one actually sits well with me because I had such a big part to play in the build-up to it. Like, I played scored in every round almost until the final, scored in the semi, got a nice assist in the quarter, scored in the round of 16. So that one actually feels different to the World Cup as such, because I felt like we all did that as a group, and I'd played my part. My race was run. I couldn't play the final, but if we won, I was absolutely fine with that. The World Cup's a little bit different. That's more a little bit of heartache, but all we spoke about is all motivation. You should always want to feel like you have a point to prove. I feel like I'll have the mentality of having that point to prove till I hang my boots up, always trying to having that almost self-belief of thinking I'm probably better than I am, but I'm not saying that's the case, but you should always kind of have that mentality of it's thinking, because it drives you, having that sort of personality.
Just listening to you speak and trying to prove people wrong. I was a little bit like that myself in my own career. Do you ever feel like you've done enough? You always think, no matter what you've done, there's something else. I always felt when I was playing that, no matter what I did, wasn't quite enough, and it always give me something to keep going. Do you always feel you've got like a point to prove and you keep pushing forward?
Yeah, I kind of put that on myself. I'm not talking about anyone individual when I say, like, I'm not talking about managers or people that are I'm talking about a point to prove. Just almost at the minute, I'm really hungry to get back for Spurs because we've got a new manager. I've got someone else with a point to prove. I'll probably almost feel like a new signing, Thomas Frank, by the time I'm back. And just having a new manager, and I can't wait to get out and train and show him what I'm about and show him my ability and how I'll be able to help him and the team. And just that kind of mindset, yeah.
Whenever I hear a footballer interviewed at a different stage of his career, maybe even an experienced player, you're 29, experienced player, done a lot in your career, and I hear a player say, and he gets asked the question, have you got a point to prove? And he says, no. I can never understand it. I think a footballer's got a point to prove every single day he goes into training, to prove that he's still the same player, to prove that he's still hungry, to prove that he should still be in the team. I've never got that answer. I think you've sort of got that sort of mentality, that hunger where you're going to keep going, even when you get to your mid-30s and people like me are saying that your legs have gone, you're going, oh, I'll put it wrong, I'm going to go again, I'm going to go again. And I do think you need that. And I think as a footballer, as I say, no matter what level you're at, no matter what your experience, what your quality, you've always got a point to prove.
Yeah,
you agree?
Yeah, completely. And I still feel like I've got so much more football to play. I mean, I'm 29, I'm coming into my prime years. I'm having a year of getting strong in the gym and recovering from the thingy, but recovering from my knee injury, sorry. But there's nothing wrong with, like Carragher said, having that point to prove mentality, if you want to call it that, and being hungry to get back. And I just honestly can't wait to come back, help the team, help my club.
We can't wait to see that as well, James.
Thank you.
We applaud you for what you've done so far in your career. It's been an absolute joy to watch, and we applaud you for being brave enough to come on here tonight.
Thank you very much.
Not the easiest night, perhaps, but well done indeed.
Thanks for having me.